Friends, comrades, Abraham Lincolns, if you know me, you know that I like words. If you don't know me, now you do. And how did you even find this? I am not an English major. In another life, I might have been. In this life, on Tuesdays and Thursdays from the hours of 11 until 12:05, I would occasionally pretend to be one. They welcomed me with open arms, and maybe they shouldn't have, but I did keep coming back, and they did keep opening the door, so. During these classes, which were not all during that time, but it sounded nice in the moment, I would write short stories. I found out really quickly that I am not a short story writer because all of my short stories turned into first chapters. I'm so sorry, Dr. C, it just kept happening. But the thing is, now I have all of these first chapters sitting in my Google Drive with no one to read them, just existing, alone, so lonely. You could argue, send them to literary fests, or make a website, or magazines, but that sounds like so much work. So, instead, I'm taking advantage of this little YouTube channel that I haven't thought about for a while, and I'm going to read them. The books, the stories, the chapters, by me. I wrote them, and now I'm going to read them to you. Anyways, I'm not a public speaker. I'm not a professional reader of books, but I could be, maybe, in this moment. I'm going to pretend that I am. Oh, my dog just arrived. Reggie, come. Reggie, you're making me look like a fool. Come say hello. Oh, this is my son. I love him so much. Anyways, I'm gonna do my best to read this like professional, reading something professional instead of a pretend English major reading the first chapter of a book that isn't written in my bedroom over spring break. It's gonna be great. Before I start like a real official I want to do a couple disclaimers, okay? Because I don't want to be sued by the people who come at those who make crappy videos. I know this camera isn't good. It's my MacBook. So if you're a hater, the door is right over there. I'm doing this for fun. And I'm doing it to procrastinate my responsibilities. This first story that I'm going to read is a little long. I'm going to cut it into 2 parts. Whenever I get tired of reading, I'm going to stop. And that will be that. Okay, I'm going to begin. Tobi Finch Morrison and her search for the unordinary. Chapter 1, Part 1. The first step was to evade the babysitter. This was not a problem for Tobi Finch Morrison, self-proclaimed expert escape artist and schemer virtuoso. Few situations could contain the 4th grade Houdini, aside from the principal's office occasionally, and that was only due to the limitations of such a small room with so few distractions. It was 7 o'clock on a Friday, in a world without magics, in the small town of Springfield, nestled somewhere in the Midwest. And, more importantly, it was date night for the Finch Morrisons. Date night happened approximately once a month, and only that often, as it took that long for poor Mrs. Finch Morrison to find and convince a local teenager to sacrifice their evening and their pride to an unprecedented and endlessly chaotic 9-year-old, no matter how much Mrs. Finch Morrison tried to pay them. Babysitters at the Finch Morrison household never babysat twice, and there were only so many options in Springfield. Tobi wasn't a bad kid, but she was horribly curious and burdened with a terrible and unquenchable need to do the thing and see what happens. Now she sat, perched on the 2nd floor of the Finch Morrison home, fastening a pair of makeshift night vision goggles to her face. Her hair, still slightly tinged purple from the incident last week, stuck out in every direction. Tobi pushed the windows as far as they would open, breathing in the crisp smell of seasons changing. Summertime had only recently waved goodbye, and now the trees that canopied the Finch Morrison household were beginning to spin free of shades of green and into more vibrant cloaks of reds and oranges and yellows. The night smelled of adventure. And, as the sun dipped below the horizon of gently rolling hills, as the stars began to assemble confidently in their places above, as the woven blanket of the night pulled Springfield into a gentle embrace, there it was. Where her yard met the trees, a wonderful and mysterious and orange light appeared, floating gently in the breeze, and farther, into the woods beyond, floated light after light after light. Tobi wanted, as she had wanted every night since the very first time those lights had greeted her from the woods, to follow them. They pulled her. A cool breeze blew through the opened windows. After 1 month and 7 days precisely of watching and noticing and longing, finally, it was time. And all the pieces of her plan were falling into place. Tobi removed the screen carefully, quietly, just as she had practiced, and slipped it behind the headboard of her bed. Over the vast 9 years of her life, Tobi had developed quite a knack for taking things apart. and hiding the evidence. With the poise and elegance of a mostly trained ninja, she'd attended at least 4 or 5 gymnastic classes. Tobi swung herself out the window and into the twiggy embrace of the oak tree growing outside. She scampered down the trunk and to the roots, wherein a duffel bag had been stashed the night before. It was labeled The Essentials, in messily scrawled purple Sharpie, and in one swift motion the bag was tossed over her shoulder. Tobi looked to where the woods behind her home met the perfectly cut grass. She could just make out the lights, twinkling in the brush beyond the forest line. Something about them called to her, night after night, a whisper that came in with the autumn air, an invitation into something unordinary. They wanted her to answer. They wanted her to follow them. They wanted her, and she wanted them too. But first, Tobi had a stop to make. As the shadow of a 4th grader crept around to the front of the Finch Morrison house, inside, a babysitter sat, deadened eyes glazed over to a television, completely unaware of the world spinning on around her. Whack! A small rock hit Caroline Langdon's window, startling her so much she smudged the freshly painted nail polish on her index finger. Eyes narrowed, she climbed off her bed and pushed open her window. "It's time," whispered a voice from the bushes outside her house. The leaves rustled, and out climbed her dirt-smudged next-door neighbor, Tobi Finch Morrison. Caroline sniffed and crossed her arms. She much preferred the coziness of the indoors to anything she could find outside. She did not like the dirt. She did not like bugs. She did not like the time Tobi had dragged her on a camping adventure in a Tobi-made tarp and duct-tape tent in the backyard. And, well, Caroline generally liked Tobi. Tonight, she did not. Caroline had already decided somehow mosquitoes had gotten through her screen window and were eating her alive. She did not like mosquitoes. "Tonight's the night," Tobi said, grinning ear to ear and proudly displaying her multiple missing teeth. "Tonight's the night. We're gonna follow the lights. Are you coming or what?" "I'm not going anywhere," Caroline said, sticking out her chin and making her curls bounce, "on account of the fact that we are not currently friends, because you got me grounded, and I haven't been able to stop smelling grape soda for almost an entire week, and it's after dark, and I am already in my PJs, and what on earth are you wearing?" Tobi flipped up her goggles. "Night vision," she said proudly. She swung her duffel over her shoulder and started rifling around inside. It took only a moment to locate the second pair. "I made you some too." "Well, I don't want them." "Come on, Caroline. You don't even have to scale a tree to leave your house. And I brought snacks." Caroline swatted at an invisible mosquito. "You're letting the bugs in, Tobi Finch." "I know you want to follow those lights, too," Tobi replied, unfazed. "And I know you know how to take out the screen because I showed you how last time I slept over. And it has to be tonight, you know. The adventuring." "They're probably just fireflies." "They are not fireflies. Fireflies run out of battery, everyone knows that. These puppies stay lit all night long, and I'm gonna follow them with or without you. I need to follow them. They want me to follow them." Tobi paused. "We'd be back before your parents found out, you know." "You said that last time." "We almost were. That wasn't my fault." Caroline just sniffed. "Fine, don't come with me. Don't co-pilot my adventure, but you can't complain when I come back with special plant powers, or a magical forest creature that loves me forever and unconditionally, or the key to a dimension door, all of which I have decided are very likely outcomes of the lights." Tobi turned back to the bushes. "It's just too bad I have to eat all of these gummy worms all by myself, and that friendship isn't forever." Caroline worried her lower lip as Tobi started walking away. She groaned. Fine, just 1 minute, okay?" Moments later, Caroline had pulled on a sweatshirt over her pajamas and sneakers onto her socked feet. Now she stood just outside her window, glaring. "It's cold." "I knew you wanted to see the lights," Tobi said. She handed over the goggles. "They feel kind of tight at first, but once your face goes numb, they fit fine." "If you get me into trouble again, Mom says we can't play together anymore." "I would never get you into trouble." "She says you're a bad influence." Caroline pulled on the goggles. "These are uncomfortable." "They're a necessary inconvenience," Tobi said, shrugging, "because they are tinted with maple syrup and soy sauce so we can see ghosts before they see us. And also night vision." "Does it work like that?" "Absolutely." The two began walking towards Tobi's backyard. Their sneakers crunched fallen leaves, and the sound of wing beats passed above them. Somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted. Adventures are never as fun alone, Toby said. You know? It's important to have a co-pilot in case we run into bears or quicksand or Mrs. Franklin. Mrs. Franklin was the Springfield Elementary math tutor for the mathematically challenged. Caroline considered this and slipped her small hands into the sleeves of her sweater. It was cold tonight. I'm a good co-pilot, right? You are the best co-pilot, Toby replied, and that is why we go on adventures together instead of Shelley down the street or Elizabeth from school. They simply aren't co-pilot material. Despite herself and the cold and the adventuring after bedtime, Caroline smiled. When they reached the forest line behind Toby's house, the two stood for a moment, looking ahead. We've had a lot of good ones, Toby decided, for a moment, looking back. Adventures. We'll have more, Caroline said. Her voice was nearly lost in the lull of the breeze and the whisper of the lights ahead of them. Even the night around them didn't believe her. It won't be the same, Toby said. Beyond, the lights twinkled. The first one was close, only a few feet into the woods. It looked warm, inviting, as though it would fit so nicely into the palm of one's hand. The further into the woods the two girls peered, the farther back the lights went, glow dimming with distance. Fireflies, Toby asked, incredulous, nudging her friend. What else could they be? Magics, you skeptic. Magic isn't real. Caroline crossed her arms. We've tried this before. Tonight won't make a difference. The tooth fairy isn't real, Toby said, and I should know because I've set traps and never caught anything. But Magic's is real, and I know it because how else would Mr. Drake's hair have grown back after he's been bald for as long as I've known him? And how else would time actually have stopped at school when we learned long division? And also, I've suspected that the forest behind our house is enchanted for nearly a month now, and I'm generally not wrong about these sorts of things, I'm just saying. And why would the lights have appeared 1 month and 7 days ago precisely, the exact day everything ceased to be the same? And it needs to be real. This time. This one last time. This concludes part 1 of Tobi Finch Morrison and her search for the Unordinary, chapter 1 of the book that is not written, and probably won't be. Anyways, thanks for listening. Filling your brain whole with my wordage. I would like to thank the spirit of David Bowie that inspires us all to this day. As the kids say, smash that like button. Or you don't have to do anything. Honestly, I'm really doing this for me, sort of selfishly, because I wanted to do something fun. But thanks for, joining me on the ride. It's pretty cool that you did that.
Any similarities to people existing or fictional are totally coincidental.
If you are experiencing any of the following side effects, including but not limited to headache centralized right behind your vision spheres, violent asthma, astral projection into the fourth dimension, extreme orifice leakage, turning into a can of red pinto beans, and or vertigo, seek medical attention immediately. It's probably not from watching my video, and you may be grappling with a serious medical crisis. See you next time, folks.